What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 56 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're going to break down Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. Apologies if there is some technical difficulties. My 1-year-old stomped on my laptop, so I am working on an iPad here. If there are, please let me know, and I'll turn over hosting duties to Luke. But yeah, good card. We got Conor McGregor. He's back taking on Dustin Poirier, the rematch. As I'm sure you guys all remember, this pod was quite bullish on Conor in the last fight. I think we're probably going to be again. A bunch of Conor fans here, but hopefully we'll give some good reasons why he's a good bet tonight. But beyond that, we got 12 other fights, believe it or not. So yeah, we're going to get into it. It's a fun one. You know, as usual, we're brought to you guys by Bet Online. If you want 50% bonus up to your first deposit, use the promo code CLUBSUB. And also, one other thing, quick shout out. If you guys are into Discord, chatting about sports online, go use this app, Chalkboard. Actually, our co-host here, C, is an investor in it, and it is pretty cool. Basically has all the good stuff Discord has, except you can place and tail bets through it. So yeah, go check it out, Chalkboard app. But yeah, as usual, guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We're almost at 500. Love to get there with this card. And yeah, we're gonna get into it. We got Andrew, MMA Knockout Bets, with us tonight. He's here for the Conor card, obviously. And yeah, John Targaryen. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and C at CHanson10. He's apparently C Hugh. And I guess, well, that'll take us right into the first fight. We got Hugh Yazan taking on Alan Amandovsky. C, you want to take it away?
Yeah. You like that display name? Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go.
Oh, all right. Yeah, this is the most interesting fight of the card. Honestly, probably the fight I have the most exposure to right now. Hugh, this is my fucking Asian boy. I know he's been out on some PEDs, but honestly, from what I've read, the guy just is not able to read English labels, so he didn't have any idea what he was taking. So, like, fair game to him. Honestly, how could you expect someone from China to read an English label? That's absurd. So, but yeah, in all seriousness, like, I didn't think much of this fight, and like, I still like, I don't know. I bet on LFA fights all the time and all this other shit where there's not like a whole lot of data points, but I've seen like enough from Hugh to like think that he has like some intelligence on the feet. Like anybody who could throw body punches and fucking kick the calf, like I'm pretty interested in. He's cutting down to 185. He's 6'3", looks pretty good. He's long. Amandowski's pretty much shown no ability to like win minutes. He's probably knockout or bust. Who knows what he looks like after 5 minutes? I really don't know. I think Hugh at like the current price is pretty good just based on like what I could gather. I think his chin seems good. He recovered well versus Coulter or whatever the fuck his name was. He could probably just clinch up against the cage and have success there. Just grind away a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think he has like volume upside, and I think the later this goes probably favors Hugh. Plus Amandowski is like 33, so I don't really expect like any improvements really in his game. I mean, at this phase, he just is who he is. Whereas Hugh, he's fucking 26. He's probably going to be the first person from the Chinese PI to win a fight in the UFC. It might be the last, but I know for sure the matchmakers are definitely going above and beyond to give Hugh a favorable matchup. I mean, they invested a ton of money in the China PI. China's fucking fueling the UFC with a nice fucking agreement they have for, like television rights. So I definitely think the UFC is behind Hugh as the next champion at the 185 division. So let's go.
Andrew, thoughts here.
Dude, that's a hard act to follow. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't feel as strongly as he does on this. I think it's kind of tough given the fact that both of them are so inactive. Like we haven't seen Amandowski in a year and a half, and we haven't seen Hugh in like 2.5 years. So I feel like there's a lot of guesswork being put into it. Like I got the shot on Hugh at like plus 150 or whatever. Like I understood why people would take that at like plus 150, but the current price, like I don't know, I'm not in love with it. I just think it's a lot of guesswork, and I'm probably gonna pass on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I am as well. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, sure, yeah, I'd probably bet you if I needed to make a value pick here. But like, I just don't really know what Amandovsky is. Like, I actually think, at least with Hugh, we have extended tape on what he is. He's a brawler who's going to pressure and go forward. Or maybe not extended, but, we do have that. But then with Amandovsky, we have a sample size of about 16 or 15 minutes and 20 seconds. 15 of those minutes are against Krzysztof Jotko, who's a top 15 talent at 185, and who just mauled him. Like, I can't really take anything from that fight. And then you have 20 seconds of him just brawling with John Phillips, who hits really hard and knocking him out. You go back to the rest of his tape, and it's a bunch of bums that he's stomping out, but they don't tell me anything about him. So it's like, yeah, if I had to pick a value side, I'd say Hugh. But, like, would it shock me if Amandovsky grappled him? No, because I don't know anything about it. Would it shock me if Amandovsky hits harder than I think? No, because, again, I don't really think I have any relevant data points to this fight. So, yeah, it's a pass for me. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit all the points, too, for me. I think there's a lot of other better spots on the card that I think there's just some more knowns at. Just betting the sport is hard enough as it is, so trying to eliminate as much of that potential variance as possible and eliminate as much of that guesswork, as kind of Andrew touched on, is my big thing. But to your point, I mean, gun to my head, if I was to bet it, I'd probably bet Hugh. It sounds like there's at least a little bit more going for the guy. Probably has a bit more upside in that capacity. But I know even like from his topology, I guess he's trained at Tiger Muay Thai in the past. I've seen photos of him at Jackson Wink, but I really don't know. I mean, outside, it sounds like he's at the PI and whatnot, but yeah, to your point, 3-year layoff guy used to fight at heavyweight, making his debut at 185. Probably a good sign, that the guy's, gotten in better shape and whatnot, but still haven't seen him had a fight in the weight class. So, yeah, it's a pass for me, but I'll take Hugh.
Yeah, so moving on, we got Jerome Rivera coming in at 0-3 in the UFC, taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov coming in at 0-2 in the UFC. And it's funny because he messaged me like a week and a half ago and was like, Jerome Rivera is the best value spot on this card. I was like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, I've watched Jerome Rivera fight 4 times now. The guy is trash. Then I looked at it and I'm like, would I call him the best value spot on the card? I don't know, but I do have a small bet on it here. To be honest, like, I feel like I've been higher on Zhumagulov than most in the community. But, with that being said, I feel like his game is like B- or C+ everywhere. Like, he doesn't really do anything particularly high level, but he doesn't do anything poorly either. And I don't, he's obviously very small. He's going to be giving away 6 inches in height, 6 inches in reach here. He's not much of a finisher, so I don't really think he finishes Rivera at a high clip, nor is he particularly high volume. And so it's like you take away a finishing threat, you take away, he's not much of a volume threat. You put him against a guy who's a lot taller and a lot longer who actually does throw volume. I think it warrants a sprinkle on Rivera. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think much of him. He's horrible defensively. He seems very, very weak, but he's super long. Like I said, he's going to do nothing but spam volume. And, he's shown some decent work in the clinch. Plus, Rivera, unlike Zhumagulov, is young. You would be expecting him to make improvements. I just don't. It's hard for me to imagine a scenario where Zhalgas covers, an 80% implied line. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I have him at about 65% here, but for him to cover that line, he basically needs to look like Khabib, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think a small play on Rivera here. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely understand the angle for Rivera, as you kind of touched on with Zhumagulov style, not high output. Optics aren't great, He'll kind of play the back foot, largely pretty one and done with his shots. Decent kicker, pretty accurate, has some pop in his shots when he throws. Obviously not a big finisher. But to your point, optics not great. So like I think even in like his last 4 or 5 fights with some W's and some losses in there, all of them have been pretty close, but to pretty tough guys at the same point. And so despite him, giving away some size here, I mean, in my opinion, he was the more effective striker against Paiva, who's a pretty big 125. And I actually thought he should have won that fight. Paiva's, fringe top 15, where I don't think Jerome Rivera is a UFC caliber fighter. But to your point, like a gun to my head from a value side, I probably would say Rivera is the side, but I feel like it's kind of a trap by the number spot, where I do think Zhumagulov is a UFC caliber fighter. There are some disconcerting things with the style, but I still think he wins this fight more often than not. So going with Zhumagulov.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Zhumagulov, to cover the line, he probably needs like 12 minutes of control, which, I mean, would it be the most shocking thing? I guess not. But personally, I think he's like 62% range. Yeah, I mean, Rivera, for whatever he is, height, length, those are pretty big size advantages, volume. I mean, look, I don't think he's good or anything, but Nam and fucking even Ode, like the guy's pretty explosive, pretty much within the first 5 minutes. I mean, even versus Keller, he goes for a big fucking flying knee. I mean, the guy is explosive, so I don't think he's going out really lightly. And Zhumagulov on the feet, like, look, if Rivera comes in here and he stuffs some takedowns, I just don't see how Zhumagulov's covering minus 3xx on the feet. I think Rivera could just spam enough volume, where he makes that number look pretty silly. So in my opinion, I think it's just going to be a, kind of a sloppy fight where like 29-28 split decision type ordeal where you're probably getting massive value on Rivera. I mean, I think I got like plus 300. I got plus 500 on decision. And Rivera's young enough where, like, if he did level up just a little bit, I think it's reasonable. So, yeah, I just think that there's a good amount of value on Rivera, especially by decision. I mean, plus 500, plus 600. I mean, just those lines don't even make sense to me, at least. I think the finishing upside on both sides is really not that likely.
Andrew, how about you?
I think with the grappling paths, Zhumagulov probably can cover minus 350 or whatever he is, and I kind of think he showed to have he's taken down guys with way better takedown defense than Rivera. That being said, like, I'm not rushing to the window to play minus 350 on this fight. Like, even the size advantages alone for Rivera, like, depending on what kind of better you are, might be enough to take the shot. But for me, this is a pass spot. I think Zhumagulov being a big favorite is justified, but like, you guys made some good points on the Rivera side for sure.
And next up, we got fun fight. We got Omari Akhmedov taking on Brad Tavares. Any thoughts here, Luke?
Yeah, so I actually just like kind of in general non-fight violence here. I'm on the over 2.5. It's a bit of a chalky price, but I think both guys are kind of decent archetypes for this to go over. Both haven't been, big historic finishers over the year. Both largely pretty durable in the aggregate. I know Tavares has gotten dinged a couple times. Omari dinged back at 170 a few times, but more so in recent years, both guys have been fine. Both don't push really a crazy pace, especially more so in recent years in terms of Akhmedov. He's kind of changed his style up a little bit. He used to be a lot more winging, with the big hooks go forward and all that stuff, but he seems to be a bit more composed now to try to conserve that gas tank. But I also think he's probably going to try to be shooting takedowns at some point here. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, where you have a guy in Tavares who, has elite level takedown defense, who I think is 7th active right now in the middleweight division in terms of it. And we saw him fight a guy in ACJ most recently too, where that was also kind of the big question going into the fight with how good of a, MMA wrestler grappler he is, and really virtually had no success. So is Omari a solid wrestler, good grappler? I mean, hey, went out there and submitted Tom Breeze in his last outing too. Definitely can't sleep on a guy like Omari, but I more so think Tavares can kind of just play that slow boxing, mix in some kicks in there too, and work his way to a decision. But I think just in general, the finishing sequences between, big shots between the two are going to be largely minimal. I also think Tavares can largely nullify the grappling too with some grinding. So I like the over.
Any thought here for you, C?
I took a little bit of a stab on Tavares round 3 knockout. Yeah, I mean, I'm not super confident one way or the other. Kind of think it's a close fight. Even standing, I think it's kind of a close fight, but I think Omari might gas a little bit if Brad's, providing some resistance and stuffing takedowns. Wouldn't be like super surprised if Omari got, kind of tired. But yeah, no strong convention. I just think, I think it was like plus 1,800 for Brad by knockout in the third. So I just took a small stab at that.
Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, again, you guys touched on a lot of good points. I think Tavares is the rightful favorite. His takedown defense looked outstanding against ACJ. I do think Akhmedov's probably a little bit better of a wrestler than ACJ, but I also probably think that if Akhmedov gets him down, it's not as much of a threat as if ACJ were to get him down. So I don't know. And Akhmedov's not bad on the feet either. I kind of think this will end up being a pretty close striking fight. Either guy could land. Like, I think Tavares actually has pretty underrated power. I think Akhmedov probably loses round 3 at a pretty decent clip. So I think the first 2 rounds will be close, and he loses round 3 at a pretty decent clip. So I think Tavares' slight favorite makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed what I was going to say. I guess the one thing I'll add here is I do think some people fall in love with the fact that Tavares is the more technical striker, whereas Omari tends to be a little bit more hook-based. But even with that being the case, I actually think, Omari's a bit sneaky and kind of, he's pretty clever with how he uses the hooks. Like, I'd be pretty surprised if Tavares just comes out here and boxes his face off for 15 minutes. Like kind of to Andrew's point, I think it's going to be pretty close. I do think Omari has a bit more finishing upside, if I'm being honest. I also kind of think Omari could hit takedowns in this spot. Can he control him? Probably not. Is he going to hit 6 or 7? Probably not. But I kind of think, he's a better wrestler than, Shoeface is by a decent margin. And so if he landed 2 or 3 takedowns, I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is kind of the same as Andrew. Like, I kind of think the first 2 rounds are like 50-50, but I also sort of think, round 3 is probably 70, 80% Tavares. And like at that clip, the line's about right. Maybe a tad wide, but, it's tough with that gas tank. It's kind of hard to count on Omari at the current number. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he wins this fight. I don't think there's massive value on Tavares at all. So moving on, we go to the next fight. We got another bet for me here. We got Jessica I taking on Jennifer Maia. And let me just say, I have made it a point to not go huge on women's fights anymore after the Laura Procopio disaster. I'm just, whatever. I have too much variance. But if this was a men's fight, I'd be going very big on Jessica I in this spot. I honestly think this line is largely has everything to do with the fact that Maia took a round off Valentina. And like, I guess it's just that people don't really remember Valentina's whole career, but like, I know she got held down by Maia, but Valentina's gotten held down by almost everybody that's put her on her back in her career. She just happens to have an elite level of takedown defense, but she's never had a good bottom game, and she does it now. And so it's like, yeah, Maia took her down and held her down for a round, but what did she do outside of that? Well, she got the same thing every other girl that fights Valentina. She got bonked around for 25 minutes. Now, if you look at her other fights, she got badly outstruck by Katlyn Chookagian. I don't want to MMA math it, but you saw I demonstrate a much better understanding of distance when she fought Chookagian, get in there, actually outland Chookagian, and managed to actually find boxing range. We saw I outbox Viviane Araujo, who's probably, I don't know, one of the top 3 boxers in that division. And then, meanwhile, we have Jennifer Maia losing minutes to Alexis Davis at this point in her career. But basically, I guess I think there's a lot of recency bias here. I don't think if you go back to I's fight with Calderwood, Calderwood did a great job of using teeps and using counters to basically keep I out of the range she needs to win the fight. Whereas Maia doesn't really have that ability, I don't think, to keep her on the outside with kicks. I don't think her counter game is what Calderwood's is. And even in the grappling, like, I know Maia held down Valentina for a round, but like I said, Valentina's got a bad bottom game, and I know I got held down by Calvillo, but like Calvillo's top game is like legitimately world class. Like that's I can't be upset at Jessica I being held down, especially when I saw her get put on her back by Viviane Araujo and get up fairly easily twice. Like, I would say Maia's got a fairly comparable top game to Araujo. And so ultimately it's like Maia doesn't attempt a lot of takedowns. This is probably going to be a striking match that's mostly fought in the pocket in boxing. I think, Maia hits a bit harder. I might give her a slightly favor her there, but for I to be 40% implied just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I took her here at about plus 165. Luke, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so unfortunately, going back to the Jessica I, well, again, I don't think I've ever made a cent betting the girl, but going back to it again, I'm not taking the money line. I just took a little small sprinkle on the decision line, what I think should be, largely a WMMA pitter patter fight. I'm a little bit more bullish on just the general boxing of Jennifer Maia, but in kind of the dynamic of this fight, Ai does come forward. She does throw a lot of strikes. And so kind of to your point, after, thinking about it and reflecting on it a bit more, Jessica Ai by points at like plus 250, I think is just a little nuts in what should be close, coupled with the fact that, when we have seen Maia on bottom, she's largely gotten stuck there and held there. I know she guard subbed Calderwood, but, still for the, before that even happened, she was still controlled for extensive minutes and a couple other occasions too. I know Jessica Ai doesn't really wrestle a ton, but usually when she does, she has success from top time, or I should say top position. So I think that's a way in her potentially winning rounds here. I guess I'm less bullish on potentially Maia landing takedowns. I think she'll probably more so just play the pocket game. I still do favor Maia to win the fight, but it's just hard for me not to get involved, at least small. When Maia by decision is like plus 110 and Ai by decision is plus 250. Like that discrepancy there just doesn't make a lot of sense to me between two girls who I think between both of their fights have either finished or been finished only twice in the last 5 years. So I don't know. I think it's a competitive scrap. No supreme degree of confidence in my girl Jessica, but I think she can make it a close fight. I think she can make it a scrap. I think plus 250 on her decision line is worth a poke.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this. This is kind of one of those things where I looked at it for a couple minutes, looked at some stats, and fucking figured Ai's like 50-50. And yeah, I mean, I think, I have a small Ai play. I might go back and watch more. But yeah, I mean, from what I saw and some of the numbers I was looking at, I kind of just figured Ai like 50% is fine. Plus 250 on a fight that's like probably minus fucking what is it, like minus 330 to GTD? Like you're getting
Might
plus
be
two,
bigger than that.
right? Yeah, if you're getting plus 250 on Ai by decision, like her finishing upside's like so minimal, like. It's like probably like 90% like gonna go to a decision. Like I can't really see much of a finish on either side. So plus 250 in a fight that I think is a coin flip. That Ai by decision prop is pretty good. I think plus 150, any plus number really on Jessica Ai, it's worth a bet. Yeah, I mean I wouldn't like spend too much time like milking it. I think you could watch like fucking 6 minutes and figure out if this is a coin flip.
Yeah, fair. Andrew, what are your thoughts here?
I don't feel too strongly about this one. I think Maia's slight favorite's fine. Like just not my kind of fight. Not interested in betting it at all.
Fair. We'll move on. We got a fun one, middleweight division. Dricus du Plessis coming off knocking out Marcus Perez and sending him out of the UFC, taking on Officer Trevin Giles. Luke, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about my issues I've had with Mr. Giles over the years. Just between fight IQ and output are pretty much the two big things for me that just kind of irk me about him, because we've kind of talked about it in the group chat too, that just from like a stats and even just general overall skill set perspective, he's actually not a bad fighter. He's a relatively decent fighter, but the problem is for me, he just doesn't step on the gas in enough of these fights and just hasn't proven to be, a historic finisher. And then with du Plessis, I actually had a pretty big bet on him against Maluco Perez, and that came through, but I felt absolutely terrible about it. Hindsight 2020, because he was losing pretty much every single minute of that fight prior to landing the kill shot. So I kind of did a deeper dive back on him. On paper, he's got a lot of good things going for hhim. K1 champion, 33-0 kickboxing. I think purple belt in jiu-jitsu. That's where the large majority of his subs have come. KSW champion, EFC champion, all that fun stuff. But I don't know. There's something about just how he moves. He's really stiff. I don't think he deals well with effective pressure. And I'm just not necessarily convinced that his overall style and body of work necessarily translates to the UFC level. I could be wrong. So even with that being said, it's hard to really have a supreme degree of confidence in Giles at this point for me. But I do think it's a winnable fight, because I do actually think he's the better boxer, faster hands, probably needs to, see if he can deal with those leg kicks too, because I'm assuming du Plessis will come heavy with that. And then, Duplessis will attack next and whatnot on the ground too. So I think if Giles minds his P's and Q's, steps on the gas a little bit more, I think he knocks Duplessis out, but it's really not a fight I want to be invested in.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I think Giles probably has like look, I don't know how much you could dock people for like fight IQ and, just not having the killer instinct, but I kind of think he just has Duplessis, whatever, how the fuck you say his name, covered pretty good. I don't know. I've kind of been going back and forth. I have like a unit and a half on Giles, but like, somebody told me they have like 2.5 or like 3 units on him. I like really wouldn't be like, I'd say like it's fine. I don't know. I think Duplessis' fucking finishing upside's kind of like overrated here. But yeah, I think Giles is just like cleaner winning minutes, and it's going to be faster, better movement, kind of just better everywhere. But yeah, it's just my thoughts.
Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, I think this is an all-around pretty close fight. I guess I give Duplessis a slight edge because of the low kicks. You guys touched on some of the issues with Giles. Like, I don't think he's bad. See, I think here, like, where I differ a little bit is I don't think that – it's not that I'm underrating Giles. Like, I think Giles is as good as you guys do. I just think Duplessis is probably a little better. Like, going into the tape on this, I was like, yeah, Giles is probably a little better. But then I actually watched more Duplessis and was like, I actually think he has a pretty solid game. He's good size for the weight. He throws a lot of leg kicks, and like against a guy like Giles who doesn't check kicks, like as long as that stays on the feet, I think that could become an issue later in the fight. But you guys made some good points too. Like Giles can grapple. He's probably a little bit better of a boxer. I wouldn't be surprised if either of them catch the other clean. I just think this is a close fight, and I give a slight edge to Duplessis for the leg kicks, but I'm not in love with the idea.
Yeah, I bet Giles here. I put 2 units on him. To be honest, it's one of those fights where, like, Andrew, you and I chatted about this. Luke, I also chatted with you about this as well, where it's like I kind of think it's a great – well, if it wasn't Trevin Giles, this kind of spot would be a great spot to go big on. But, like, you touched on the leg kicks, Andrew. Like, I'm not really worried about Giles getting hurt by the leg kicks. What I am – you can't hear me?
No, someone's, like, making noise.
See, put yourself on
Let's see.
Put yourself on mute. What I am worried about with Giles, though, is like it's not very difficult for me to envision a fight where Giles does his normal low volume bullshit and ends up dropping, a close decision because Duplessis just gets off a lot with the leg kicks. And like, it's very easy for me to picture that. But with that said, Giles is faster. He hits harder. He's a better athlete. I kind of agree with C. He's got him covered everywhere here. Like, I could see Giles getting guillotined. I could see him losing a low-volume decision. But really, I mean, Giles has beaten a lot of, like, these solid fighters in the UFC. And, like, Dricus Duplessis' best, win is knocking out Soldic in a fight that he was probably going to lose. And we saw that fight happen, again after that where he did lose fairly convincingly. I just think Giles is a superior fighter. So I bet him for 2 units. Not going bigger just because I don't really trust him at all. But I do think he's the clear side personally. Moving on, I want to stay with you here, Andrew. We got your boy, Ilya Topuria, taking on the Wizard, Ryan Hall.
Yeah, so obviously if you've been following me for a while, I'm pretty high on Topuria. I hit him at plus 162 against Yusuf Zalal, pretty big. I hit him at -2 something against Jackson, but I also hit his KO prop against Jackson at plus 440, which was a crazy spot in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, it's no secret. I think this kid has all the tools to be a future top contender or even champ. So I essentially think Ryan Hall is a leg lock or bust here. I don't think this is remotely competitive on the feet. And, I'll throw a hot take out there. I think Topuria might even be a better MMA grappler than Ryan Hall. Hall might be a little more dangerous with the submissions from bottom. He's obviously great from the 50-50 position, but I think when you throw in strikes into jiu-jitsu, that could level the playing field for Topuria a little bit. Am I suggesting he should go shoot a double off the bat? No, I'm not. I think any time that they exchange, Topuria is going to hurt him. I think Ryan Hall will just kind of keep falling to his back, and Topuria probably won't follow him down there. I'd cap Topuria probably like 80% here. I don't see how Hall wins this outside of like catching him in something. It could happen, I guess. Like Hall's proven to be able to catch people before, but he also has what is he? Didn't he not even submit like Artem Lobov?
No.
It's like, yeah, he submitted 4-year-old BJ Penn, and like that was cool and all, but like he didn't submit Elkins, right?
No.
He's only got one sub in his 4 UFC fights.
Yeah, and it's like, sure, he's a threat, but he's also getting up there in age. He has no athleticism, no strength, no size at the weight. Like, I struggle to see how he has any success here outside of catching a submission.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on some level, I don't disagree with that. I do have a bet here. It's actually on Fight Goes to Decision at plus 132. Like, I mostly agree with Andrew's take on the fight, sort of. Like, I guess my concern for Topuria would be, you know, Hall's a tricky fighter because he's literally not going to engage you at all. Like, he seems like a guy who's pretty happy. See, mute yourself. Mute yourself.
I'm muted.
Now you're muted, fucker. Hall seems like the kind of guy who's pretty happy to lose a decision, and not engage in the pocket. And I kind of think that's what's going to happen. Like, watching the Elkins fight, I actually think Elkins had the right idea, which basically whenever Hall pulls guard, just kick the legs, throw a punch or two, get out of there. And I mean, I think that's fine. I think Topuria can do that all day. I also think Top Control Clinic is probably also in play. The reason I like GTD is, as tempting as it is to imagine Topuria knocking his head into the third row after the Jackson fight, Jackson stood with Topuria. I know for a fact Hall is not going to stand there with him. It isn't to say Topuria can't catch him while he's ducking into guard, but, you know, when I know a guy's going to pull guard rather than engage in the pocket, and I know that that guy's probably not going to hit a sub, and the other guy's probably not going to hit a sub, I don't know. It seems like that should be about 60% to me. So I like goes the distance here. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I guess we're kind of all over the board on this one. I don't know if I'm as bullish on the goes the distance. I kind of think Topuria knocks him out, to be completely honest. I think he's probably the fastest, cleaner boxer that Hall's probably ever fought. I think even when he fought Saul Rogers back on Tough, Saul had the right idea. He did ding him. He did hurt him. It's just a really funky fight. So I definitely understand Andrew's take with the conviction on Topuria, because I largely agree. But then again, it's one of those fights where it's hard to have like a solid benchmark or anything really to go off of. And I think just in general how Topuria approaches the fight, I think will also be pretty interesting. So, like, you know, maybe he can get in top position and be fine there and be defensively responsible. I wouldn't be shocked, actually. But I don't know. We'll see. It's a funky fight. I like Topuria to win, but no bet for me.
See, any take here? Or should I just skip?
5 stars.
Oh, 5 stars. Nick says, what's up?
Hello, guys.
Hey, we're starting a GoFundMe for Nick, okay, guys?
Well, like 5 stars for you, brother. 7.
Yeah, I liked early on. I like the plus money on the over 2.5. I kind of think anything, you know, that goes under is probably just like a Topuria knockout to the, like, probably a body shot, I'd imagine. But yeah, I'm not like running to play Topuria like fucking minus 250 or whatever it is. Especially if he's, you know, super willing to engage in the grappling. I mean, I don't like fully really know, you know, what would happen. You know, whatever. I think GTD plus money, good bet. But yeah, I mean, if he kills him right away on the first exchange, wouldn't be overly surprising. But yeah, no strong opinion.
Yeah. So moving on, we got Nico Price, Michel Pereira. I have no bets here. I think the line is about right. I guess, you know, I looked at, you know, it doesn't go the distance, but, you know, even that, as tempting as it is in a price fight, you watch Pereira and the guy, not that he won't engage, but Pereira, as fun as he is not going to sit down and exchange in the pocket. If I had a little more faith in Price's ability to cut off the cage and force big exchanges, I'd be all over it. But for as much as Price is willing to throw volume, like, I think he's pretty easy to just kite around the cage, especially in a big cage. And so I guess my view is, Price has knockout upside. He has out-voluming Pereira upside. Williams out-volumed him. But I do think he's at a pretty substantial skill disadvantage here. And I think Pereira has a fairly clear path to victory, via the grappling if he decides to take it. We saw Jeff Neal, who I don't even think is a particularly great wrestler, pretty easily school Price in the grappling. I could see the same thing happening here. I just mostly think, Pereira is going to control where the fight takes place. Price obviously has his normal win condition and, maybe could just on forward pressure and optics win the fight. But I think the line's right. Pereira is the more skilled fighter. He should win this. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I more so see just Pereira kind of being that more athletic type of guy. It was definitely a little concerning when he came in right off the jump, that he kind of was a little bit more reckless in everything he did and whatnot. But seems like he's been a bit more composed, at least in terms of his approach in recent years too. So I think that's encouraging. Price is a little kind of rock 'em, sock 'em, live by the sword, die by the sword. I don't necessarily know if that's the greatest approach to take against Pereira.
Oh, yeah, they're talking about ISIS.
No, they're not talking about ISIS.
So anyway, I guess I don't necessarily know if the rock 'em, sock 'em approach is really the way to go against Pereira personally. But yeah, I mean, Nico's dangerous, knocked out dudes from hammer fist from bottom, up kick James Vick in the face, deaded Tim Means. I mean, the guy's dangerous. You got to mind your cues, Nico. But to your point, I think that Pereira also has an advantage in the grappling and on bottom if he wants to. So I think, a smart, conservative Pereira to some extent, while still, keeping his volume up. I thought he was too conservative in the Chaos Williams fight, which is somewhat of a concern. But I kind of more so think it's like a Pereira's fight to lose, but at the same time, I think the line's also kind of correct just because Nico's a dangerous guy to fight. But so I'm going with Pereira to actually finish him, but no bet for me.
See, how about you?
No bet, but I do like Pereira. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe Price brings out some violence. Yeah, pass.
Andrew?
Yeah, I thought about this fight a lot. I think if this fight took place like a year ago, the doesn't go to decision line would be like minus 400. And I think a lot of times people miss the boat on goes to decision versus doesn't go to decision. I think a big thing you need to look at is if someone's going to force a fight, right? So Nico Price, in my opinion, forces a fight in pretty much every fight he's in. I think like outside of the Cerrone fight, like I could pull it up right here, but I can't even remember another time he went the distance. Like he's the kind of guy where it doesn't really matter if Pereira takes a slow approach or not, because he's just gonna go. He's gonna make him fight one way or another. Like so that's what I look for. Yeah, I'm looking at Nico Price's record right now. Before the Cerrone fight, Luque stoppage, Vic stoppage, Jeff Neal stoppage, Tim Means stoppage, Abdul Al-Hassan stoppage, Randy Brown stoppage, George Sullivan. You get where I'm going with this, right? Pretty much every fight to stoppage besides a couple in his entire one decision his entire career. And I think he has what it takes to bring out the crazy in Michel Pereira, and Pereira won't really have a choice but to kind of engage him in a fight. And I think Pereira knocking out Price is a pretty reasonable guess to the fight. I mean, it's not like either of them have shown to be super durable in their careers. I mean, both of them have been finished probably in like a lot of their fights. I think Nico Price has been finished in every one of his losses. I think that Michel Pereira was finished a couple times, like right before going into the UFC. There's a fight. Remember the famous clip of Pereira getting knocked out like 3 times in one fight? Yeah. So I mean, long story short, I haven't played it yet. I'm considering it. I think doesn't go to decision, should probably be wider here.
Fair. So we move on. We got the natural born killer coming back again, looking to kind of resurrect the career and go on a 3-fight win streak, taking on Max Payne Griffin. Luke, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I like Griffin in the spot, actually. Not like a decent amount, but at least decent in the sense of where I was able to grab him at the price tag at minus 170. I think just with the correct approach in general, especially mixing in the takedowns, I think is really the main way for him to cover his price tag. Condit stuffs takedowns, I think, at like 38% or something like that. Pretty much any time he's been proactively wrestled or grappled, he gets put on bottom. He is a black belt, but he hasn't really shown to be an overt submission threat. And pretty much any time I've seen Griffin on top, he's always looked fine. He struggled with control at certain points, but Condit really isn't a guy that's proactively working to get back to the feet very often. I think you had a bet on what's his name, Court McGee, John, and you were about to pull your hair out, and you're like, what the hell? Why aren't we wrestling, Court? I don't think he even attempted a takedown in the fight and proceeded to get outpointed over the course of 3 rounds. Actually, still a really competitive fight numerically, though. The strikes in general were pretty close, but kind of competitive fight, clear round winner type of scenario. My point is that I think there's a pretty clear path there in terms of the stand up. I do think the stand up's reasonably competitive, but I think Griffin's striking's actually came a bit of a ways in the last couple of years. I know people like to say that, he's gotten dinged a few times, but he's also fought quite a few good guys in there, and his durability is largely held up. Like even in the Morono fight, he was looking pretty solid until he got caught with that head kick, and it went a little bit more downhill from there. But I think the durability narrative on him is a little bit overplayed. I think he's a solid boxer. He moves pretty well, and to be honest, right now I think we're seeing the best Max Griffin we have in the UFC. So it's kind of one thing I'm willing to invest in, and I think I can't take anything away from Condit getting his last 2 Ws, like I said, but that's over an aged Matt Brown and a guy in Court McGee who actually looked really good in his last outing, but who just did not take the right approach to the fight at all. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I think Griffin will, and because of that, I think he covers his price tag, stays smart, can actually win in the striking, and really secures in the wrestling.
Pass on this fight for me, by the way.
Okay. Are you muted?
I pass on the Griffin fight. No play.
I know. John, are you muted? I can't hear you.
Yeah, John's muted. We can't hear you.
I could hear C. I could hear C, but I can't hear John.
Yeah, I can't hear John either.
Fuck you, John.
Yeah, but anyway, I kind of think the price or the Max Griffin versus Carlos Condit line is about right. I get why Griffin's the favorite. If he takes the grappling heavy approach, he probably more so covers his price line. But I don't think it's like he isn't shown to be like a super aggressive wrestler. Like, do I think he'll mix takedowns? And yeah, do I think he's gonna go out there and just completely wrestle fuck Condit? Probably not. I think on the feet, it's pretty close. Maybe like a slight edge to Condit, like a little slight edge. But I think with the takedowns, if Griffin takes the right approach here, he's probably a hindsight big favorite. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't want to be. If he doesn't take the right approach, I wouldn't want to be holding a -200 ticket on him. I'm probably passing on this fight. And I played Griffin at -180 or whatever he was against Kenan Song. But yeah, I think in this fight, probably -200s, right? Maybe like a little tiny bit of value on Condit, but not enough for me to make the play.
All right. Anybody have the card up? Can you guys still hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, my Tapology is not loading right now, so I cannot see that.
Howdy, brother. Have you been?
Where does he keep going, dude? He's been to like 3 stores, I feel like.
Here, but I gotta go out tonight. Thank you, buddy.
Let me see if I can get it up on my phone. This is turning out to be a disaster for 264.
No, we got it. We've got Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinho.
Okay.
Luke, why don't you take it away? I'm the host now.
All right, there you go, Andrew. Yeah, well, I think it's a pretty binary fight. I don't think there's going to really be any hot takes here. Guys coming in on short notice, not a UFC caliber fighter, in my opinion. Knocked out a few times, even in some of the fights he hasn't been finished or even won. He's been hurt in those before too. I think barring O'Malley, just kind of playing with his food a little bit. I mean, he should ice this guy early. Like I said, I don't think that's really a hot take. I mean, maybe Sean just tries to extend it a little bit. And like I said, maybe he fucks around. Maybe he actually tries to wrestle, grapple, or do some of that stuff. But I mean, honestly, even the relatively chalky price on under 1.5, I think is fair here. When I play some Sean round 1, I think that's still plus money. To me, it's one of those spots where you just kind of got to identify the levels and, take the best potential options in terms of props or totals instead of, throwing a minus 900, in your parlays and whatnot. I just think there's a couple props that I think are just glaringly obvious that have value on O'Malley.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and guys, sorry about the audio quality here. Like I said at the beginning, doing this from an iPad this week, unfortunately. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about O'Malley right now. Yeah, I mean, he's going to kill this guy. I think anything you want to play that involves O'Malley like executing this dude inside the first 7 minutes of the fight is probably good. Not saying it's a lock, but I mean, he's got this guy skilled anywhere. I think he's like 90%, and like 5 of that 10% for Moutinho is just O'Malley being fragile. It's really hard for me to see him losing this fight. See, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, under 1.5, I think it's like minus 170. It's really hard for me to imagine this going past 7.5 minutes. Whatever. I don't know. When the fuck's O'Malley going to get somebody like Merab? I just, I don't know. How long is this going to last where we get this shit? But, yeah, I'm rooting for O'Malley, in 30 seconds. So the train keeps on rolling.
Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, I just want to say, first and foremost, if you're giving O'Malley shit for fighting this guy and not giving Ricky Simon, Cody Stamen, and Luis Volta shit, like you're literally like a loser. You don't understand anything about this. Ricky Simon went on fucking Twitter and called Sean O'Malley out, thinking that O'Malley wouldn't take the fight. O'Malley takes the fight, and all of a sudden he can't make 145. And for anyone who's like, oh, well, O'Malley should have just fought him at 145. O'Malley has been training his body for months to weigh 136 pounds on Saturday, July 10th, or whatever the day is. I think it's the 10th. Why would he ever cater? Like, Sean O'Malley's probably walking around like 148 right now. Ricky Simone's probably walking around like 165. Like, it just makes no sense. And just, I think people have this completely skewed view on this whole thing. Anyway, I know you were asking my opinion on the betting aspect, not on that aspect, so I'll answer that as well. I think Sean probably killed him. Like you said, I think really the only way he loses this fight is if somehow this kid's like if somehow Sean's like a really shitty grappler, which I don't think he is, but we don't really have too much evidence to suggest that he's not. But even if he was in some hypothetical a really shitty grappler, like he's probably one of the hardest fighters to close distance on. Like he's not a safe like entry, if that makes sense. He's so long for the weight class, and his striking is so elusive and so precise that I think even when the time comes when he does fight good grapplers, even again, I don't know anything about his grappling. I've heard it's pretty good, but just judging based off what I've seen, let's pretend it's not. I think it's going to be really hard to close the distance on him and even get close to him. That's why this Simon fight would be really exciting. And I think even the Smolka fight, like I thought O'Malley at like -3 whatever was honestly value. I thought Sean probably won that fight like 85% of the time. Yeah, so I mean, what can you do? He's going to go put on a nice performance in front of a big crowd, and hopefully it'll get him some steam to fight someone like a Simon or a Stamen or someone like that. I mean, I've always wanted to see the Merab fight, but that's just me.
Yeah, for sure. We move on. We got Irina Aldana taking on Yana Kunitskaya. I bet Kunitskaya here. I got her at about +125. To be honest, I still think there's some value on the line of +100. I guess my view is everybody really likes Aldana, and if you look at like the stats and her style, it's not hard to see why. She swings heavy, she swings a lot, she's got good takedown defense, but when you kind of dig a layer beneath the surface, like you go look at her memorable performances, like Bech Kohea, Lucy Pudilova. The one thing all the girls she's looked good against have in common is they've stood in front of her and given her a fight in the pocket. When she has fought girls who don't do that, she doesn't really have an answer. Like you look at Rocky, I bet her huge against Rocky, and that should have been an easy fight for her. But Rocky just avoided the pocket, would blitz in, and then got some work done in the clinch. You look at the Holm fight. Now, look, I'm not saying Yana is Holly Holm, but Holly just basically played the back foot game the entire time in circle. Then Aldana, instead of ever deciding to cut off the cage, followed her around the entire fight. and lost that pretty cleanly. And if you actually look at when she actually has been put on the ground, it's looked pretty bad. And then on the other side, you have Yana, and like, look, I get Yana's not as on the surface is physically imposing, but Yana's actually like really strong. And you know, when it comes to distance striking, Yana's not going to bite down and exchange bombs in the pocket. She's going to throw a jab, and she's going to circle, and she's going to throw kicks. That's what she's going to do. So far, I haven't really seen Aldana do much to suggest she can cut that off or stop it. The other thing she's going to do is push her into the clinch and beat her up there. We've seen Aldana struggle in the clinch, and when she's been put on her back, you know, we've seen her dominated from bottom when she's been on bottom. Yana's got a pretty good top game. You know, the key to beating Yana is putting her on the mat, but I don't think Aldana's a very good grappler. And so I kind of think unless Yana's made improvements and can force pocket exchanges or can, you know, get out of the clinch, which, you know, we've seen Yana control better grapplers than Aldana in the clinch, so I don't really buy that happens. I don't really see how Yana's not a favorite here. I think she should be 57%, 65%, somewhere in that range. But I have 2 units on her. C, any thoughts here?
Oh, sorry. I didn't look into this one.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points. I made a stupid bet on Aldana versus Holly Holm. Like, it happens. But here, as you remember, I was trying to get Aldana at plus 125 and couldn't. And then I decided to just – it was one of those things where I was kind of debating, like, on the line. Like, I was like, okay, she's plus 125. As you said, historically, people kind of like Aldana. And I was like, maybe it'll get a little wider, so I'll wait it out. And then all of a sudden, it was like went right from plus 125 to like plus 105. And I was like, all right, maybe we'll see some kickback. And now it's kind of at a pick 'em. So I'm probably going to pass. I think maybe Yana like 53, 55%, like the ever so slightest lean there. Probably there's not enough value on the line right now where I would bet it.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, this is honestly probably the fight on the card that I did the most tape on. I spent quite a few hours researching this one. I've always been like a big Aldana truther, big fanboy of her over the years. But from a stylistic perspective, I think John hit a lot of my main points too. Is that, you know, traditionally, you know, she's just not going to give Aldana that type of fight that she really needs to succeed. Because actually, you know, for most girls, not necessarily just at the level, but just most girls in general really thrive from just forward volume pressure boxing. But after watching it, really where Aldana does best is actually going backwards and kind of in the mid range. She doesn't really do a great job of, like, to your point, like cutting girls off, staying in girls' faces in that capacity. When she has to play the bull, she hasn't really done that well. We even saw that in some components of the Pudilova fight too. And so to your point again, John, that, you know, I do think Yana's volume can be competitive, but she's not going to sit there and trade those shots. Coupled with, you know, people talk about Aldana's volume. Aldana eats actually more strikes than she lands too. And that's part of the reason, you know, why she's been in a lot of these competitive fights too. But the main credence, in my opinion, for Yana is that clinch game. She's very strong from there when she gets to the body lock, not only in terms of actually landing damage, but just actually controlling time on the cage. I don't think she comes from a traditional judo background, but I've seen her hit some nice trips and throws as well, because I honestly don't think she's probably double legging Aldana, to be honest. So I think actually, you know, just that trip in throw based game could actually potentially work pretty well. We saw Holly Holm have success from the body lock. So do I think Yana washes her on the ground? Probably not. Even against Holm, you know, she's shown pretty decent get-ups in regards to Aldana and got out of mount a couple times, I think, too. So Aldana isn't lost on bottom. She seems that she's competent there, but she can be taken down. So I think that can also aid in Yana winning rounds. But, you know, if this is a range, you know, striking affair for 15 minutes, will I feel great about my bet on Yana? Probably not. But I just don't necessarily think that's what it's going to be for 15 minutes with the right game plan. So I like Yana at plus money.
Yeah, agreed. We move on. See, I'm going to start with you here. We got Tuivasa taking on Greg Hardy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I played the over when it was pretty much a pick 'em. Mostly been trying to just play some of these heavyweights like over 1.5, so I know we're going to get steam, so I can just arb out. But yeah, I think it's up to like minus 200 some places. But yeah, I played Hardy. To be honest, I think Hardy's just better kind of just significantly better outside of like cardio, I guess. And I do think there are cardio concerns, but I guess like my thing with like Hardy's cardio is that like I don't know that Tua is going to give him a fight where like I guess Hardy's just going to like death gas. And yeah, obviously some of these, the checking the leg kicks, I see it, I guess, but I think he can make the adjustments. I know Castro got hurt, but DC was talking to him about like on the air, he could hear him talking about the calf kicks. Then Hardy made an adjustment. I just think Hardy's just better. I mean, it's hard for me to see like where Tuivasa has like a whole bunch of success. Quite honestly, I think Hardy's game is like fine if he doesn't, just death gas. I think it's like pretty well rounded, but yeah, I mean, if he death gasses, I guess. But I think he kind of just piece up fucking Tuivasa, and I think like a GTD, like I think it favors like Hardy. I don't know. I find it like Tuivasa like finishing upside probably isn't like pretty reliant on like Hardy just gassing. He seems like pretty durable. I mean, I don't know. I just think there's more reasons to believe Hardy should be like just like a moderate favorite. But yeah, it's just me.
Andrew, how about you?
I think the Tuivasa leg kicks can't be ignored here. I mean, he's reliable to throw them, and Hardy's pretty much had trouble with leg kicks every time someone's done it to him in a fight. Like even the De Castro fight, he was winning badly, and like his leg was still pretty chewed up. And I think, and actually, Jorgen had hurt his foot. I think he broke his foot in the first or second round. And so the announcers are like, how come he stopped throwing leg kicks? And that was why. So I think that could have been a different fight if he didn't break his foot because he would have kept throwing leg kicks. I mean, if I remember correctly, Volkov was chewing him up with the kicks. Like, I just think that's impossible to ignore. And I mean, neither of these guys, like, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Like, neither of these guys are going to grapple. Hardy has the athletic advantage. Tuivasa is probably like a little bit better technically. Tuivasa's game is probably a little more well-rounded in terms of like gonna throw kicks. Like Hardy's probably gonna throw mainly head strikes. And I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Tuivasa being a slight favorite is justified. Maybe like minus 150 is where I'd cap it, but I'm not too interested in playing this fight. Like maybe if it was a pick, I'd have a small bet on Tuivasa, but not too interested. Oh yeah, by the way, have you noticed I'm not chewing gum this podcast? I know we've gotten some comments on that. I quit chewing gum 2 weeks ago. Fun fact.
You're a hero.
Dude, I was spending too much money on it. Every day after work, I'd just grab a pack of gum. It's like people who like smoke cigarettes or something. I was like, I gotta stop doing this.
Luke, what do you got here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Andrew that I agree with Ty being a slight favorite. And I do want to say thank God for Andrew that I felt like I was the only person who's been spewing that the Greg Hardy-Jorgen De Castro fight would have been a lot different if he didn't break his foot in two places in the first round. I still don't understand how all three judges gave the first round to Greg Hardy. Maybe my opinions changed a little bit more on that from what we've seen from De Castro in recent performances. But still, at the time, I was pretty vindicated on that and actually had a bet on Jorgen at plus 160. But nonetheless, yeah, I don't think the kicks can necessarily be ignored. But in I guess, defense of Hardy, my opinion on him has changed a decent amount. I think he's evolved a decent amount as a fighter in terms of his technical acumen, but the gas tank considerations are still there. The kicking considerations are still there. But I do think Ty leaves himself very reckless and open when he comes into the pocket on entry, and Hardy still hits pretty hard. So I think Ty's pretty live to get knocked out. I guess I'm a little in disagreement with C if the fight's extended that I would favor Hardy. Not necessarily, just because it's ironic, in my opinion, how he's won his decisions. In my opinion, despite Ty not being a decision machine, it's just a really weird fight. I can see how you can make a case for either guy. I lean Ty, but no strong opinion.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I'm with C that I think Hardy is the superior striker when it comes to skill. Like I just think his boxing is a lot more educated than Tuivasa's is, in my opinion. he's got a good jab. He actually does some stuff to walk people onto the right hand. He has good kicks himself. But, like, when I was taping it, it's like I think Hardy's pretty live for a KO early because I think Hot Ty is begging to get just tipped right on the chin. But, like, even, like, the Green fight, he looked when that fight ended fairly gassed. Like, pretty much every fight the fights he hasn't slowed down have been low-tempo fights. And, like, if Ty gives him a low-tempo fight, I think he's going to win it fairly easily. But if it turns into a fight where Ty's walking forward and they're exchanging, I just don't trust Hardy to be there in, like, round 3. I don't think Ty's a cardio machine, but I do think he's reliable to continue to come forward. And so with that being the case, like, yeah, I think Hardy's the more skilled fighter. But I also think the experience plus, just the clear cardio dynamic, makes it very hard to back Hardy here and not favor Ty slightly. So we move on. We have the co-main event. See, I'll start with you. We got Gilbert Burns taking on Wonderboy Thompson. What are your thoughts?
Peanut butter. Yeah, I like Burns here. I understand, like, conceptually, I guess, why people are playing Wonderboy, but at the same time, like, getting like plus, I think at one point he was like plus 160 maybe some places, right? Or plus 150.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my thing with Wonderboy is, look, I mean, he's 37. His game's pretty much built on reflexes. And now he's going up against Burns, who, like, yeah, I get it. Burns is somewhat fragile. Like, I understand it. And maybe the under's the best play. But Burns hits fucking hard. I mean, he had Usman wobbled. He's explosive as fuck. He throws some calf kicks. And even though he's a BJJ guy, his wrestling's, like, good enough. Where, like, he's going to test Wonderboy. And I think, like, just, like, having that grappling path and being plus money, like, generally, like, in general, doesn't make too much sense. And I know Wonderboy could look, I don't think that, like, Burns is, like, like, anywhere near a favorite on the feet. But, like, if you told me that Wonderboy is just kind of staring at Burns for a while, it wouldn't surprise me. If Burns gets, like, a bunch of time against the cage, wouldn't completely surprise me. So, like, I don't really understand why, if it went to a decision, it was just like a low volume fight, like, how it would be, like, super shocking that Burns won. I mean, it happens. Wonderboy pretty much got 2 favorable matchups recently. Luka just fucking comes forward with fuck all of footwork. And he's just, like, willing to engage in that type of fight. And Neil kind of just sucks, which is unfortunate. But, I mean, the guy lost to Magny pretty convincingly. Pretty much less high on Neil than I was before. So, yeah, I mean, taking it plus money on Burns versus Wonderboy, who, if Burns insta-subs him, like, is anyone going to be surprised? Like, it wouldn't be all that surprising. Nobody's really pushed, like, the wrestling on Thompson in some time. And at age 37, I mean, I guess you could take the leap that he's fucking upped his grappling game somehow. But, I mean, it seems unlikely to me. I just see that there's more paths for Burns to take this than, like, Thompson. Like, Thompson pretty much has to stick and move and, deal with Burns that way, where Burns has, like, multiple paths. So, yeah, I think Burns is a pretty good bet at plus money.
Andrew, how about you?
All right, so I've been pretty mellow tempered this episode. Time for me to start kicking things up into high gear. I think Stephen Thompson at minus 150 or worse is probably, like, one of the worst bets you can make on the card. I think it's impossible to look at his last, like, however many fights and think there's any evidence that he's going to be able to stop Gilbert Burns' grappling. I mean, look at his last 4 fights. It's Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, Anthony Pettis, Darren Till. I mean, those guys combined shot 0 takedowns. They all played the exact. Let's think about this. His last 4 fights, he had 4 guys that were going to play the exact same game that he wants them to play, and he's 2-2 in those fights. And, like, I love Stephen Thompson. I was telling you this the other day. I was like, I bet Stephen Thompson against Jeff Neal at plus 100. I bet Stephen Thompson against Vicente Luque at minus 110. I bet Stephen Thompson against Darren Till. I bet Stephen Thompson against Masvidal. It's like I bet Stephen Thompson all the time. Like I bet him in pretty much every fight he's been in the last 5-6 years, besides the Pettis fight. But it's like those are all in fights where the people he's fighting are going to give him the exact fight he's looking for. I think Burns is a bad matchup for him. I personally would cap Burns as like a pretty good size favorite, honestly. Another thing no one's really talked about this fight too is Thompson has had major issues, even in the fights he's winning convincingly, with guys kicking him in the leg. And I think between Burns' power, Burns' leg kicks, and the grappling path, which is massive. I mean, a takedown probably ends the round. Like, has Stephen Thompson shown you any ability that he's going to be able to get up off the ground against a guy like Gilbert Burns? Like, he could take him down and submit him. Like, that wouldn't shock me. He could take him down and that's the round. That wouldn't shock me. But I have no idea how you cap Stephen Thompson is like, what is he, a plus or minus 170 right now? Like, I personally cap Burns is the favorite. And I think this line's pretty crazy. I think Stephen Thompson at minus 150 or whatever is just probably one of the worst bets he could make on the card.
Yeah, fair. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, so I went from like when the matchup was originally announced, like almost convinced. I think it was like when the early line dropped, it was like Wonder Boy minus 150 or something like that. And I was almost convinced.
Burns was the favorite.
What's that?
When they dropped the line, Burns was the favorite.
Was he really?
Yeah. And everyone was like, oh my God, Thompson's the dog. And I was like, Burns, as he should be.
Maybe it was just when I saw it after it flipped or whatever. But anyway, I saw Thompson at minus 150. I was like, I like that. I'm probably going to end up on Thompson. A lot of time went by. We got in closer to fight week. I did the research. I came away and I was like, kind of like Burns a little bit. And then I flipped a tad back to the Thompson side. But in general, what I just actually ended up on instead of a money line side, I think the fight doesn't go at plus money is a pretty solid look. I guess I'm less bullish on both guys. It seems to be probably one of the more polarizing fights of the card. And I get it to, a lot of perspectives. I think you can make really solid, strong cases for both guys, depending on, how you interpret, historics from both guys too. But I guess to Andrew's point, I really see a lot of credence to one, the kicking game of Burns that you touched on, and two, the takedowns of Burns. And I think this is one component that a lot of people also haven't talked about, is that because of the takedown threat of Burns being, somewhat prevalent and evident, at least in terms of this matchup and how high level he is on the ground, a guy in Stephen Thompson who uses a lot of kicks to establish that range, coupled with, movement and other things. I'm not saying it's exclusively 2 kicks, but nonetheless, kicks are a big component of that. We have seen him get taken down with caught kicks before. So that also, I think, is an interesting, piece of the soup that needs to be talked about. Whereas, is he kicking as much? If he is, I mean, to me, that opens up opportunities for takedowns for Burns. If he's not, to me, that also says that Burns has a better chance to be able to close distance and land big shots on Thompson. And it's not like Thompson is invincible either, guys. He's been dropped 5 times in the UFC. I know people talk about, the range game he plays and the point game, which he does play very, very well in the aggregate over a large sample size. I concede that, but not invincible nonetheless. To I guess, the detriment of Burns, in my opinion, I don't really think he closes distance particularly effectively. I think he can be reckless at times. I know Wonderboy isn't the biggest KO artist, but his timing, hand speed is good. And at the end of the day, Burns has to close distance to win this fight. He can't play, in my opinion, an outside pitter-patter game with Stephen Thompson extended if he wants to win this fight. So with that, I think that opens up opportunities and exchanges for both guys to land knockout shots. And then, if Burns is able to get him down, to Andrew's point, that could potentially be the round. But I'm more so of the opinion, if he does get him down, I think he takes this back and subs him. So yeah, I kind of like general fight violence then aside, but I think there's cases to be made for both guys. Yeah,
I like Burns. I think it should be about a pick 'em. Personally, I played Burns at about plus 162. You guys touched on a lot of the good points of the fight. The only things I'll add is Andrew touched on it a bit, but, it's very easy to talk about, movement and, that's why Thompson won't get taken down. But if it's just movement stops takedowns, then why aren't elite kickboxers the MMA meta? Why is it grappling? Can someone explain that to me? Is anybody like? I'm not saying Thompson's necessarily worse than Israel Adesanya when it comes to movement, but would anybody say he's convincingly better? And yet, Adesanya's been taken down or circled to the cage before. Somebody who wants to proactively grapple, if they have decent footwork, can get you there, even if they're at a footwork disadvantage. We've seen it many, many, many times. And so, like with Thompson, no one's attempted a takedown against Thompson in 4 years. Like, literally, it's been 4 years. The two Masvidal attempted weren't real takedowns. The Hendricks fight would have been interesting. Hendricks got in deep and didn't get him down, and then got finished almost immediately. So we didn't get to see that play out. The only data points we have, you can say, oh, Thompson's been working with Chris Weidman. Cool fucking story. Like, how many we hear this all the time, and it doesn't matter. Like, we haven't. The only data points we have of Thompson being taken down are Matt Brown, which was way back, and then the two more recent are against Tyron Woodley, and both times he got held down fairly easily. So the guys, no one's tried to proactively grapple him since Matt Brown. Not the guys that could. Hendricks got finished early. McDonald didn't try to for whatever reason. Woodley barely tried to, and when he did, he had success. Masvidal didn't really try to. And so we have data points showing Thompson being bad on his back against Gilbert Burns is like probably the second best MMA grappler in the history of the submission grappler in the history of the UFC, and he's a pretty good wrestler. And beyond that, even on the feet, it's like, are we going to pretend the fight with the two fights with Woodley didn't happen? Now, I bet Thompson in those fights, but the reality is they were close staring contests. Burns, look, he has bombed the pocket at times. Like, he could against Usman. He knew he could. Usman was not going to counter him. But he also has played the counter game before. Like, go look at his fight with Gunnar Nelson. If Burns sits back and doesn't go hard and aggro, why is Thompson at a huge edge? They both probably have similar power and finishing upside. Thompson's more technical, and I'd favor him in that matchup, but I wouldn't have him at -4, -500, like in a kickboxing match that's very, very low tempo. Nothing close to that. So I think you're talking about a fight with, Thompson is the superior technical striker, but likely, unless Burns loses his mind, it's likely going to be fairly close in low volume. Like, I think people forget guys who don't go forward on Thompson, he doesn't let volume off. Thompson isn't a guy who wants to lead. Like, the reason he landed so much against Neal and against Luque is both of them pressured and neither did it effectively, and he was able to counter the fuck out of both of them. The fights before that, Darren Till lands 38 significant strikes over 25 minutes. The two Woodley fights, over 50 minutes, he lands 120 total significant strikes. Like, we've seen low-volume Thompson before. That wouldn't shock me. I think it's a pick-em fight, and frankly, with the unknowns, let me tell you this. Let me take on the unknown side the guy who I know is an elite grappler against the guy who's grappling I've seen be bad, and I don't know if it's improved. Like, Burns has big favorite upside. Thompson has probably paying off his price upside, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I like Thompson, or I like Burns here. I think it's kind of a no-brainer and better than +150. But everybody in MMA Twitter likes Thompson, so what could go wrong? Anyway, moving on. We got the rematch, the trilogy. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. Last time we did this, we had Andrew on as well. We all picked Conor. I rewatched it. It's an ugly watch, to be honest. But the question is, has anybody's thoughts really changed? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Have my thoughts changed? No, not really. I mean, I capped Conor as a big favorite the first time. I cap him big favorite. It's the second time. And my logic behind that is that I think Conor's the better boxer. I think he's the better kickboxer. I think outside of if we're just looking at what we saw in the last fight, Dustin chewed up that leg. Conor won the first round, but it was pretty obvious going into the second round, especially the latter parts of the second round, that Conor's leg was completely done. But I mean, I didn't rewatch the fight until a couple weeks ago when I was going over this matchup, but I was like, holy shit, Conor was like pretty much winning every exchange up until the leg kicks got to, until Dustin literally walked around side of him because Conor couldn't move his leg and finished him. But and that's not to take anything away from Dustin. I think a lot of people misinterpret what I'm saying. It's not that. Dustin had a great game plan. It worked out perfectly, but I don't see him repeat. Let me ask you this. I know what you're going to say, but let me ask the audience this. If you went out there knowing that Dustin, the leg kick thing wasn't going to be repeatable. I'm already laughing at some of these comments. These are some of the worst comment sections I've ever seen. But like if someone told you Dustin isn't going to land a leg kick, like would you really be comfortable holding a Dustin minus anything ticket? Because I certainly wouldn't be. But yeah, I think outside of the leg kicks, Conor won most of the striking exchanges. His defensive wrestling, which I'm more concerned about going into the second fight than I am leg kicks. I think his defensive wrestling looks really good against Dustin. I mean, Dustin was I forgot, but Dustin was trying to get the wrestling going, and he really couldn't. So, again, if you told me before that second fight, if Dustin couldn't get the wrestling going and Dustin wasn't going to win boxing exchanges, like, and you could have Conor even money, it'd be like, great, I'll take that any day of the week. Can Dustin win again? Sure, but I cap Conor probably like 75% here, and I think Dustin needs to wrestle to win, honestly, and I don't think his wrestling really looked like much of anything against Conor the first time. Maybe if he takes a little bit more of a wrestling heavy approach, he get some success going. But I don't know. I think a lot of Conor narratives are overblown, such as like the car. Like I think his cardio looks fine in his last fight. I think the Conor can't wrestle thing is overblown. I think the Conor can't go into the later rounds thing is overblown. Like Dustin's a really good fighter. He's well rounded, but I think Conor, if he is close to what he used to be, I think he probably looks like a hindsight favorite.
See, how about you?
Yeah, obviously the first time I liked Conor. I actually didn't play Conor, when we were on the show. I hadn't played Conor, but I got stuck quite a bit with like Sarah McMahon and some other garbage on that card where, I was like, okay, what the fuck? It's like minus 300. I had already said like, yeah, you probably shouldn't play it, but like, I think Conor's going to win like convincingly. And then obviously I ate all the chalk I could eat and fucking played it. But here nor there, like last time, I think I think DP was obviously a great bet by anybody, right? There's, I'm not like debating that, but like, there's also not like, there was like a bunch of people who was like, yeah, Dustin's going to come out and just kick the calf. Like that's Dustin's brand new approach to fighting. Like, he figured out everything to do versus Conor. Like he's just going to kick the calf. Nobody said that. Literally, there's not anything to support that going into that fight that Dustin was just going to fucking kick the calf. And he comes out, he kicks the calf. And it like what it is just a variable that's kind of like an unknown, going into that. Like it was just like a variable that you really like didn't know. Like how would Conor react, this and that. So now this time around, like I've kind of been talking like most of the week about how Conor was like overextended and kind of off balance, from the calf kicks. And like if he makes those adjustments and like he's better at kicking range than Dustin. And like I think the adjustments he needs to make, like it's not rocket science. Like pretty much, even though I don't think this is a great site, the fight site, they did put out an article where I kind of agree with like most of the things that Conor needs to do to adjust on the kicks. So like, I mean, Conor's camp would have to be retarded if they couldn't figure out how to fucking adjust the calf kicks. Like it's not rocket science. And like, I think if Conor can like be at kicking range a little bit more and throw that like front snap kick and just kind of control that range, he could draw Dustin in a bit more. And like, if his calf's not compromised, he's going to land harder. And one of the other things he should do is like when he catches those kicks, like he didn't really know what to do. But like if his calf's not dead and he can catch and he can fire straight down the middle, he's gonna hit Dustin pretty hard. And I think even like like if that fight ended after 7 minutes and Conor had knocked out Dustin, everybody would be like, okay, yeah, he covered his line, he looked good. Like he didn't look fantastic, but he looked pretty good. I mean, Dustin was having a hard time just getting anything off, and Conor was able to just put him on the back foot a ton. And that's one thing that Dustin kind of does is just like lets you choose like the fight that you're gonna fight. And I think like in this case, like if Conor adjusts for the leg kicks, I really think that like he's probably like a moderate favorite. I don't think he's maybe minus 300. I don't think it's that range. I just think he's like moderate favorite. And I think he looked good and like most of those exchanges, his head movement looked good. I mean, DP wasn't really landing clean until he kind of hit him with that counter left hook in the first. That check hook in the first was probably like the best shot he had landed prior to like the exchange where Conor gets knocked out. And yeah, I mean, DP is obviously like dangerous, in the pocket and those extended exchanges, but getting in there is not going to be easy. Yeah, I mean, I just hope Conor kicks more. And I think like most of the Conor narrative is like not even something like like that anybody could like the data points just like aren't there to be like Conor has bad cardio. Like it's based on literally fucking fuck none of anything.
Dude, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
I'm sorry to
like,
interrupt you. Some of these people in the comments are lucky they follow you because they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean they like, like, look, dude, I get it. He rides a bike and you don't see him running. I'm sure he's running. Like I don't, if that's your takeaway, but even in like round 4 and 5 of Diaz and like I guess like one of the better like cases for Khabib or for Conor's cardio being fine is like he gets mauled by Khabib for 10 minutes and then has the best round anyone's ever had versus Khabib in round 3. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just like there's not a lot of substance. Even Conor being a quitter, like, okay, I the first Diaz fight, sure. I mean, he blew his load and whatever, it happened. I don't see how anybody can say that Conor's a quitter. What? Because he tapped a fucking Khabib? I mean, so did Poirier. Quicker. I mean, fucking, it's stupid. It's not even like logical. So yeah, I mean, I think, the other bet I have is I have Conor by decision at plus 850, and part of my logic on it is that if it GTDs, like I think one that it probably means everybody's like hypotheticals about Conor's cardio being bad are wrong, and 2, it means that like the deeper the fight went, like probably means Dustin's power didn't really translate and Conor was like okay from a cardio perspective. So I kind of just favor Conor if it goes to a decision. So plus 850, I'm willing to roll the dice.
Yeah. So look, obviously I'm a Conor fan. Like I'm not gonna deny that. Like that would be stupid to deny that. But I guess so. Look, when I go into the first fight, I was like, I honestly think Conor's like 80%. I obviously think I was wrong about that. I think the one big adjustment to my capping from that fight is I probably overcredited the durability, and also just like one of the reasons I thought Conor should be such a big favorite is I didn't see a way that the guys who have given Conor trouble have been either able to ragdoll him on the mat. Look, Dustin landed a takedown. He's not ragdolling Conor on the mat. Like that's not. I don't even think it's a live outcome unless Conor's injured or completely gassed out. But he could land takedowns again for sure. And the other thing is the guy that the guys have caused some problems like Diaz will come forward nonstop. And look, Diaz is like Frankenstein. He's all time durable, and I really didn't believe going into that fight that Dustin would be able to bite the mouthpiece and go forward without taking enough damage to finish him. Truthfully, after leaving that fight, I still don't think that's the case. We didn't see Dustin pretty much go forward that entire fight. Actually, Dustin's game plan was brilliant. He sat back and looked for that check hook. And look, he caught him once in the first with it, and he caught him once in the second. The funny thing is about that entire thing with the hook is pretty much whenever Conor didn't throw a 1-2, he touched him square because Dustin was trying to time it. Will he adjust for that? I don't know. I'd like to think he does. But the bottom line is whenever he disguised it or would throw a 2 first or the 1 by itself, he was hitting him without any problem at all. The leg kicks obviously were a huge factor. And maybe they will be again. And I'll say this. If the leg kicks are a huge factor again, then Conor's not really the fighter that like I think he is. Like, that's an adjustment you'd expect changes to be made to. And maybe he won't. Who knows? But we saw him make big adjustments between the first Diaz fight and the second one. So, but there are ways to deal with leg kicks, kind of to C's point. There's a number of different ways that you could deal with them that I would expect him to. Now, all of that is to say, look, Dustin's a very good fighter. I think he's got a very good chance to win this fight. I personally put Conor at about 55, 60%, and my logic is pretty much the same. I kind of subscribe to C's view with the cardio. Look, I don't think Conor's max. I wouldn't even say Conor has good cardio. I just don't really buy, he's going to death gas, reliably. Whereas, and people don't want to talk about it. So like, oh, Dustin beat Max in a high volume fight, but it's like no one wants to talk about round 3 against Dan Hooker. Dustin's basically gasping for air and can't go forward. Just Hooker gassed worse. Like, I actually think that fight, Hooker-Dustin, is a very possible outcome here where both guys are dead fucking tired come the end of round 3. And look, I mean, I think that's an interesting fight. Like if you get the Conor from round 3 against Khabib and the Dustin from, rounds 4 and 5 against Hooker, you're going to have 2 gassed out guys. And I think it's interesting. But even with that being the case, I still favor Conor more early, like to win rounds 1 and 2. Not a lock, but I think, he should be the favorite in those spots. I still think he has more finishing upside early in this fight. It's easy to say, Dustin finished him last fight, but yeah, sure, Conor finished him the fight before that. Dustin gets hurt just about every fight, whereas Conor, he's been hurt, visibly hurt, twice in his career, 3 if you count the first Diaz fight where he was death gassed. Dustin gets hurt every fight. That's just the reality. And so I do kind of favor Conor more to finish. Like I said, look, maybe he makes 0 adjustments, and if that's the case, then yeah, Dustin should be a good size favorite if that's the case. I don't really think there's much reason to think that he'll make no adjustments, though. I do think, whether you want to look at the numbers, whether you want to look at who's carried more power for their entire career, Conor's knockdown rate is absolutely insane. 3% of his distance strikes end in knockdowns. Those are like good heavyweight numbers for knockdown numbers. I just think he has more finishing upside. I do think while they're fresh, unless he makes no adjustments, he's likely to win the early minutes of this fight. Like if I clipped for someone who hadn't seen the fight, the first 7 minutes of the fight, pretty much before the check hook and the fight ending sequence of last fight, their reaction wouldn't be, oh, I saw that and I think Poirier should have been favored. It would have been like, oh, this was line minus 300. That might have been a little wide, but this guy probably should be the favorite. Which isn't to say that I think he should be lying like that. Like I said, I think it should be about 55, 60%. But that's the reality of the fight. He went off as a minus 350 favorite, won the first 7 minutes of the fight, got his leg chewed up, ate a check hook, and got finished. Okay. But he still won the first 7 minutes of the fight. That did happen. Like, how you want to look at this. And so, yeah, I think Dustin can win this fight. I think Conor can win this fight. I do think Conor is the more skilled fighter. Maybe I'll be wrong. It's possible. But, yeah, I favor Conor. I think he should be – I think getting Conor plus money is a very good bet. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so you guys unpacked quite a bit for this, so I don't want to rehash a ton of stuff. I guess there's like 2 main points I want to hit. First and foremost, I could 100% be wrong here, and we were kind of talking about it in the group chat. And I said I'm 100% fine with being wrong here. I did bet Conor at plus money, but I guess big reason number 1 is I think this is a very good example of why there will always be an edge betting MMA. Once again, I'm going to preface by saying it again. I could be wrong in this spot, but to me, this is a massive market overcorrection. For it to go from Conor closing minus 300 to plus money. So, a plus 25% implied drop based on the first bite. Once again, you guys talked about, pretty much everything in detail, but really what the quintessential difference was there was the calf kicks. And then I've also heard other, the Dustin Truth crowd is that say, oh, well, all the Conor Truth crowd, that's all they're saying is that it's the calf kicks. But it's like, once again, if you actually go back and watch the fights, yes, Conor did take it down. Yes, Conor did get some cage time. But last time I checked, all 3 judges in that first round scored it unanimously for Conor. And Conor was hitting him at space and winning the large majority of minutes of that fight. So once again, can't take anything away from Dustin, but for people to, I guess, shit on the Conor crowd or the Conor backers for them having the rationale of the calf kicks being a large majority of the reason for the loss. Like, oh, you're not looking at the hooks from Dustin. It's like, well, the hooks from Dustin largely opened up because of the calf kicks. So it's like, it's kind of a spiral downhill from there. But in general, I'm also more bullish on the sense that I don't think I should say, I think the Conor cardio narrative being poor is a tad overplayed. If the guy is truly a terrible gasser, I don't know how he goes out there and wins a 4th round unanimously over Nate Diaz. That just doesn't make any logical sense. Is the guy Lance Armstrong? No, never said he was. But is his cardio terrible? I don't know if I'd go that far either. And I think this is really the big consideration of the fight. Assuming those adjustments are made that some of us have touched on the pod, I think that does wonders for him in terms of his cardio as well. Outside of obviously just defending the calf kicks, but if he's flowing better, if he's moving better, even if he's actually able to wrestle and get some takedowns, Dustin, isn't immune to being wrestled either. Dustin also isn't immune to calf kicks. Go watching the Jim Miller fight. Jim Miller almost finished him with calf kicks. And we saw, a solid adjustment made from Conor in the second Diaz fight to go to a more kick-heavy game plan too. So I don't know. To me, once again, I don't have supreme degree of confidence in Conor. I'm kind of with you, John. I'm more like 55, 60% Conor. But I just think a 25% plus drop from the first to second fight, if you can extrapolate a couple of the other different things that happened, I think it's too much of a market overcorrection. I think there's too much assumption. I think people just, once again, they think Conor's done. He sucks. He's 1-3 in his last 4, whatever. We don't want to look at the context of any of the fights at all. We're just going to say he's done. Once again, I want to also say to those people, where are your Dustin tickets at? I know a couple people bet Dustin, but I'm going to say it every time when people who have these takes and it comes back 6 months later and the line changes this much, and you have now this revelation that Dustin should be where he is. Where were your Dustin plus 275 tickets just 6 months ago? That's all I'm saying. It's just it's every week with this stuff. Everyone is so fluid to change their opinions based on a couple different things, one fight, one outcome, as if nobody can ever rebound in this sport. As if they lose the last fight, oh, they're going to lose this next one, of course. Listen, once again, I could be wrong. I'm just saying I think this is a kind of a microcosm of the issue that some people have in betting MMA, that they overcorrect based on recent performances and can't address a guy's certain skill set or the ability to make adjustments. So we'll see. I don't know. That's my ramble.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the game, right? And we could all be wrong. It's very possible.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, guys. We love all of you. Like, Conor brings out the best and the worst in everybody, but he is great for the sport. The sport is where it is today because of how much intensity he stirs up, whether you love him or hate him. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, look, we're betting on a percentage, not what happened in an outcome, right? Hey, the Mets, when they lost the World Series to the Royals, they led after the 8th inning in 4 out of 5 games. They didn't win. You think that happens 10 out of 10 times? I mean, everything is different every fight. We'll see, though. Maybe Dustin is the side. Who knows? Look, I hope whoever you guys bet on, you win, as long as we're not losing. But go Conor. We're rooting for Conor this week again. And look, if we're wrong, I'm happy to say I'm wrong. I'm never the guy to shy from losing a bet. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that'll do it this week. Enjoy the fights this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun either way. It's going to be a big spectacle. Andrew, enjoy Vegas. He's going to be out there for the fights. Thanks for joining us. He's at MMA Knockout Bets on Twitter. With Luke at SWR Betting and myself at MMA Fox. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. Don't judge us for liking Conor or betting Conor. We enjoy it. But thanks for coming out, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.